What's up, guys? Ryan and Matt here with the DFS 5-pack. The goal of this video, we want to talk about MLB DFS, or for if you're brand new, which is kind of the point of this video, this is fantasy baseball on DraftKings. Now, the rules are going to be a little bit different if you're starting to play on FanDuel for the first time. They're going to be different. They're similar but different. So just know that it's not going to be exactly the same if you're checking out on FanDuel or Yahoo or anything like that. But the goal is just to give a real basic 30,000-foot view of a couple things that can make you better if you are brand new to MLB DFS. And if you're really brand new, DFS stands for Daily Fantasy Sports.
Yeah, so I think this is a good video to get out there to people. Baseball's got a lot of idiosyncrasies. You got to know this stuff, because if you don't, you'll just get eaten alive on most days. It's important stuff. The little stuff matters in baseball a lot more than other sports.
I think, especially for, again, the really brand new people, when you first start trying out DraftKings or FanDuel, you feel like I know sports. I'm going to be really good at this. I watch baseball all the time. No, guys, it is a lot more than that. Everybody that you're talking to and you're playing up against watches baseball every single day, or most of the variety of them do, or they pay somebody like us for some help. I'm talking the cream of the crop as far as people who know their sports. So it's very, very competitive, especially the higher up the dollar amount that you get. So you're going to need to learn a lot of these things if you want to at least ever withdraw money, as opposed to always just paying in.
Definitely. It's a common mistake that beginners make, thinking that, they're going to enter the dream contest that has, going to get the really low points and people aren't going to know what they're doing. There aren't any like that. Everyone knows what they're doing. Not everyone, but if you want to win money, you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, they either know what they're doing or they pay somebody to help them know what they're doing. So I'm actually going to go a little bit out of order, Matt, here. What I want to talk about right away is you're going to hear GPPs and you're going to hear cash games as your two big things that people are going to talk about. Your GPPs stand for guaranteed prize pool. You're going to find that underneath your tournaments. And let's just say, for example, there's two different kinds that you're going to want to note of, and that is multi-entry versus single entry. Multi-entry, you can enter up to 20 times with a variety of lineups. The best way to go about that is by building a core group of smaller players and then changing the players around them. For me personally, not as much in baseball, but overall, I like single entry. This means just everybody can enter at one time. For example, this tournament right here has a $12 buy-in. You can see first place gets $2,500, second place gets $1,500, and so on down there. If you want to be successful playing GPPs, you got to get one big win in your life at least in order to do so. It tiers very aggressively towards the top.
That's a good point. You don't need tons of big wins, depending on how much you play, of course, but you need a couple, because it eats money, the GPPs, unless you win, because even coming in second, third, and a lot of them, it's nice and it feels good and you get paid a little bit for that night, but generally you're not bringing life-changing money. A lot of these GPPs, like you said, 20 entry max, 55 max. I agree. I like to stick to the single entry, at least, single or 3 entry, because a lot of times, you'll get bigger tournaments with 3 entry max. So sometimes that is what it is. But yeah, it's just a better way for people that don't use, algorithms and the lineup cards to just make lineups.
You can tier them by the number of entries if you're looking for which kind of contest you're trying to talk about. And this one's called the Moonshot. It's a very popular one because it's low dollar, but you can enter it up to 20 times. So if you think you're going to enter it once and beating all these people with what are called optimizers and algorithms that go along with it, it's a really difficult proposition. However, you can be more competitive in these single entries or these 3 entry ones that we had one pulled up a little bit earlier, but just to kind of get the difference of them. Now, cash games is a whole other ball of wax, and you can play them for $1, you can play them for $5,000. The basic idea behind a cash game is you're going to double your money. Top half doubles, bottom half loses. A double up, for example. This one right here. Man, so there's 124 entries in this one, for example, and I believe it would be they can give you your full contest details. The top 54 will double their money. A 50-50, on the other hand, again, is going to be a little bit different. And what a 50-50 will do is the top exact half, whereas this one was just 54 out of 124, the top half will get approximately 90% as opposed to straight doubling their money. So they'll go up, as a ratio of like 1.8% or something like that, or 1.8 times.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. You're more of the cash game guy, so I don't know. Is there to you? And we never really even got into this. I know you prefer double ups. Does it really matter to you?
I prefer double ups. I like the straight being able to double your money, but everybody can have preferences that are a little bit different. It just goes to you what you like better. Nobody can tell you what you prefer. For me, during the middle of basketball, in the middle of football and things like that, I will play a lot of these $25 double ups, $50 double ups and things like that. Baseball, I do like GPPs a little bit better than I do in the other sports, but I feel like we're getting a little off track right here. So let's just pick out a double up. We're not actually entering this one or anything like that. But the whole goal of this is just to go through basic roster construction for those of you that are brand new. All right, guys. So basically, you get two pitchers. That might help. Okay, so this is a double up, but that doesn't matter right now. All we want to do is go through the basics of what you have for a lineup. Two pitchers, a catcher, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, three outfielders. Doesn't need to be left field, center field, right field, just any selection of outfielders that you can go across. So,
it doesn't mean also, just to add to that point, that you have to do it in that order. I know a lot of people get caught up in that. Have to fill the two pitchers first and the catcher. No, you can fill it however you want it.
Yep. So what you'll notice right away is obviously you start looking at the pitchers, because most people will start by looking at pitching because they're going to at least want to knock out who their best pitcher is on the day. Pitchers pay out bigger prices. In a cash game, normally you're trying to aim for about 100 points, give or take, is like the goal. Some days the cash line, what it takes to win money, will be 125. Other days it'll be as low as 65 if some of the guys that a lot of people bought just don't do very well. But you can see like a big money pitcher like a Max Scherzer, he averaged 26 points a game last year. So that's about what you can expect out of him. It'll vary from game to game a little bit, but he averaged right around 26 points. So you're thinking, wow, if I could go with Max Scherzer and Chris Sale, who averaged 27, that's an easy way to get to 100 points, right? It is, but unfortunately, this now puts you in a position where you can only spend $32.25 per offensive guy. Now, if I were to switch over to outfielders, you can see the good offensive players, you can't afford any of them anymore. So that's why double studding is really difficult to do, especially when you have a lot of these guys up here in pricing. It's just really, really difficult to do. There are days where it's possible, but then you kind of need what we call punt plays, which is where you basically just take a scrub for like the low minimum pricing, like say 200, 2,500, and you just put them in there and hope they can give you a walk and a run or something like that.
Yeah, so there are days to do that, but not opening day. There's days to do that when there's injuries and one lineup looks to be in a good spot. That is not opening day. It's not most days. It's just impossible to construct a lineup right like that. When these studs are on the hill, it's hard to use one of them and all the hitters you want. You can't even use one of them and all the hitters you want. So to use two of them, it's impossible.
So on the flip side of things, if you go over to your pitchers and you take a look at a couple of these lesser guys, and now you start asking yourself, do I really want to pitch Homer Bailey against the Nationals? Because when pitchers are bad, they can be really bad. I mean, look at that outing against St. Louis. I know this is last year, but 1.6 points, minus 14.9. Nothing ruins your day than like a pitcher getting shelled. So if you chance a guy like a Homer Bailey so you can pay up to the Mike Trouts of the world, and he does this, you're screwed.
Screwed in any format. If he does that, you're done. So yeah, I love the risk that's involved with baseball. I love finding mid-tier pitchers. The top are generally always really in good spots, and the bottoms, it's always very much risky to use them, except for few circumstances where that doesn't apply, but certainly not here. So it's always a give and take in baseball, and the other part of it that I think it's important to know is that I think there's more volatility in hitting than there is in pitching. So I think in cash games specifically, you need to lock up good starting pitching.
Exactly. You don't need a ton out of your hitters. So hypothetically, if you were to go back over to your pitchers and select, let's say, Max Scherzer and like a mediocre pitcher, like say a Chase Anderson, for example. Okay. Well, now you're up to 37 per offensive guy. Still not as much as you would like, but a lot better than 3,200. So one thing I will do a lot is I will go down to the catcher position and I'll find a fill-in catcher for the day, a guy who is maybe just getting his one rare start. He won't be very expensive. And let's just say that today, for example, Drew Butera is getting his day and he only catches maybe once a week. I put him in there. Okay, and now I'm getting up to 4,000 almost per offensive guy. And now I get a lot more flexibility for where I want to go.
And because the other part of this, and this is just baseball in a nutshell, there's every chance that Drew Butera could outscore a lot of guys that are 4K here. So it just makes so much more sense in baseball.
Yeah, and I usually find catchers will usually have what I call one punt play that you can at least that's viable for the day. And again, for a guy for 2,400, if he can just take a walk and score a run, you can live with that. And there's a lot of times that guy will get you 0, and you can live with that too if you get your other pieces right. You don't find as many decent outfielders who are going to be able to be below 2,500.
No, but sometimes you do, and a lot of times the catcher might be better than a guy like Butera. A lot of times, at least last year specifically, they had weird pricing on guys. I'm not sure how that will work this year. But yeah, baseball, whenever a guy is in the starting lineup and is like almost under 3K, but especially under 2,500, and he's not like, one of the garbage guy that we know of, he's playable.
Yes, sir. Okay. So it's just a bail basics. We're going to do more detailed videos, guys. And if you want them, stay tuned. I'm breaking down these things in more detail, but we want this to be kind of more of a 30,000 foot view. So we're going to move along here real quickly. The next thing I want to talk about is a real popular term. It's called stacking. Stacking is something you'll hear baseball, basketball, football. It's always got its place, but it's most heavily utilized within the baseball realm. So usually what you will is you're going to find one of the weaker pitchers on the board, a James Shields, a Clayton Richard, Homer Bailey, and you're going to find the guy that you want to pick on for the day. Now, because I'm a Milwaukee Brewers fan, I'm going to pick on Clayton Richard. Now, the guy's not a total gas can, but it's opening day. Most teams got their best pitchers out there. So you're not necessarily scared of going after this guy. You also know that Milwaukee, for example, has a really good track record against left-handed pitching throughout the last couple of seasons. So you could do something along the lines of this. Manny Pena, you put him in at the catcher position. Only 3K isn't going to hurt you too much. We're just guessing Jonathan VR is going to be the starting second baseman and possibly batting leadoff. You're going to watch that one. Again, this isn't an exact lineup. We're just talking hypotheticals right now.
Throw Domingo Santana in there and Arcia.
Santana. And then we can go with a Ryan Braun, for example.
And the general basis for why stacking applies more in baseball, guys, is that, in order for, let's say Braun, in order to maximize Braun's points, for instance, on a grand slam, which is the most points you can get, you need other guys on base. So if you also have those other guys on base, then you're getting the most points possible. So, I know a lot of people don't like to look at it that way, but I do. Stacking is the way to go a lot of times in baseball.
Yep. And it's also you're picking on a specific pitcher. So if you just think that this specific pitcher is going to suck and you can get some of the good guys that go along with them, maybe you like Pena a lot, but Pena gets walked and, later in the game hits a sac fly and only gives you 4 points, but it ends up being Arcia that has got the big day. You got the right pieces of this specific team. And it's one of the few sports I've found where stacking works in both cash games and GPPs, where a lot of times, like in football, you don't want to stack too heavy in cash games, albeit sometimes it does have its place. And then you can stack a maximum of 5 guys from one team. No more. That's why we filled in the 5 right here. Doesn't mean you always need to go 5 deep. You have to treat each individual slate like it's a person. You know what I mean? Everything's going to be a little bit different. A lot of times what I like to do is pick a couple of pitchers that I want to pick on and then maybe do something like this. Like I'll take out Braun and I'll take out Arcia, but know that I want to go 3 deep with Brewers, but also know that I really want to pick on Kendall Graveman. So I might go out and grab a Mike Trout if I can afford him, which is usually not possible. But grab a Mike Trout, grab a Zach Cozart, and then, one other player from the Angels. So I'll pick a couple of teams that I want to stack. And if I'm running multiple entries, especially, that I'll look to kind of run some variations of the same team. In stacking can be anywhere from 3 to 5 guys. It just depends on what you think is best for that certain day.
Yeah, they're called mini stacks. And I think that you can run 2-man mini stacks of 2 guys in a row in the order. Stacking to me in baseball just makes too much sense for a couple reasons. One, because if you don't do it, it's really hard, if not impossible, to pick out each guy at a different position that you think is going to hit a home run, and which is what you need if you're not stacking. Obviously, you don't need that from every guy, but it's just hard to pick like that. Secondly, in baseball, we want guys in lineups that are cheap. When you can get these 8-9 hitters in the lineup that you stack, it just makes too much sense.
And we want to pick on the crappy pitchers. I mean,
Sure.
why do you want to pick hitters against Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer when you could pick out hitters against Homer Bailey and Clayton Richard? Now, the pricing doesn't always work out where you can do that, but that's your general goal in what you would look at on a daily basis. So there's mini stacks, there's all-out stacks. It's going to vary on your confidence. And like, let's just say, for example, we're looking at some of these crappy pitchers. And we'll go back to Clayton Richard. Now, this isn't a real statistic. I'm just making it up. Don't take this one as something you want to look at. But let's just say that we know Richard lets right-handers bat 350 off of him, but lefties only bat 220. Okay, well, what are we going to do then? We're going to stack Brewers righties. It's not a full Brewers stack. It's the right-handed hitters from the Brewers.
Yeah, great point right there. Stacking is something I think we can get into a little more on individual videos if you want. Let's talk about weather. I know you like Kevin Roth.
Yeah, so go to Twitter. If you guys want to follow me, you'll see them all over my Twitter profile, and the link to my Twitter profile is down in the description section below the video. But there's a variety of guys. Now, back in the day, it was really only Kevin Roth, and he does a write-up for a website called RotoGrinders, a very popular website. Unless you're brand new to DFS, you definitely know who he is. But he will do a breakdown each day. This is his early one from a bunch of days ago. He'll come out with one the day up that'll be a lot more accurate. But it'll tell you what you can expect out of the wind. Is it going to be swirling, blowing in, blowing out, temperature, rain, stuff like that. And the big thing here, guys, if a game gets rained out and postponed, you don't get those points. And so your day is pretty much done unless you flat out nut every other pick that you get.
Yeah, that's one of the ultimate risks is taking games like that. It's just you won't get the points. It's just like you just said, you will not get the points. That's something that they can consider changing, but they haven't, and they probably won't.
No, they won't, because it's just too hard to deal with that. And there's nothing to you. It was your job to check the weather, and if you didn't do it and you took a gamble, that's your problem. On the flip side of it, though, there'll be days where, like Coors Field, and everybody stacks Coors Field all the time because we know about the offense out there. There'll be days where Coors Field calls for a chance of rain, so it'll lower the ownership. Now, usually stacking Coors works, because there's always a lot of offense, but you're not being different than anybody else out there. So, yeah, it's great that Nolan Arenado hit 3 home runs yesterday. I remember that happened last year, and I had him, but so did 70% of the field. So I wasn't different than anybody else. We all got the 54. But on a rain day like that, maybe you can get these guys at a lower ownership, so you're gambling. But, of course, if the game doesn't play, you're screwed.
Exactly. It's just something you really got to look at and study. It's playing baseball DFS on a consistent basis is not for someone who doesn't have the time or someone who's getting information.
So you can look at, just go to your Twitter. If you don't want to follow me, you can just type in DSF weather. You can see there's a bunch of people you can follow on Twitter. Bookmark their website. You got to check your weather every day, because rain is one thing, but the other thing that goes along with it is you want to look at your wind direction, for example. If the wind is blowing in 20 miles an hour, hell, man, that's a great bump up to the pitchers and a huge bump down to the offense.
Yep.
And if the wind's blowing out 20 miles an hour to right field at Yankee Stadium, that some 90-year-old man could come out and bunt it over that mini porch out in right field. So that's a big bump up to the hitters and a huge bump down to the pitchers. So check it every day. I mean, you don't need to fixate on it to the point where you check it 25 times, but look at it just so you have an idea of what the weather is going to be like for the day.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Next thing we wanted to talk about, batter versus pitcher statistics. Now, this is one of the more highly debated statistics within the DFS community. I like it, but you got to use it at your discretion. And I put out a much longer video on this over the weekend, so go back to check that one out if you want better details. But you're looking for the experience that a certain batter has against a certain hitter, or how a certain team has done against a certain pitcher. So I'm trying to see if we got any teams here with a lot of experience. Okay. Odorizzi has gone up against the Baltimore Orioles a lot. You can see that he hasn't, amounted to much of the strikeout department, but we also know he's not a high K pitcher. We can see he's given up 12 home runs in 200 at-bats. That's a lot. The team's hitting about 275 off of him. I'm not really looking at going after Jake Odorizzi against the Baltimore Orioles. They faced them a lot because of their time in the AL East together. These statistics aren't so bad that it's absolutely unplayable, but it's not a specific guy that I'm looking to go after from a pitching perspective. And in the same game, you can see that like Jonathan Scope, for example, has gone up against Jake Odorizzi 29 times. He has 11 hits, including 5 of them for extra bases. That's not a large enough sample size that I call him like a must play, but it would definitely give me another reason to play him if like Scope had been hot over the last week, for example.
Exactly. You just got to know how to use it. It's not something to just use blindly, but both you and I really like it. I don't understand why people don't use it more, because it's one thing in baseball that can give you a really good idea, especially when you watch it like we do, because you see how guys, look in at bats against other guys, which is so big. That's why watching baseball is the most important. Like you said, you got to know how to use it. Something you can't take with a grain of salt, or you got to take with a grain of salt. And again, just watching more baseball and learning and playing more will help you get used to it more. That's really the only thing that will.
Mm-hmm. The more at bats, the better. Again, I can see that Rafael Devers is batting 1,000 off of Chris Archer. Like, woohoo! It's 2 at bats. 2 at bats doesn't mean anything. On the flip side, though, his teammate has 31 at bats. And in that time, not only does he have 12 hits when he's batting 387, he's also got 8 walks, only 3 strikeouts, 4 home runs, 2 doubles. So 6 of them have gone for extra bases. I put a lot more credit into something like that than I do something small like even, Ben Tiende, who's 5 for 10. Okay, I'm starting to buy in a little bit, but I still want to see more at bats before I really use that to my advantage.
Yeah, I agree. Benintendi, got to see more. 5 for 10, one extra base hit. Betts tells us something. Devers tells us nothing. Benintendi, maybe. It's nice to read right there.
It's a supporting statistic is one way to look at it. It doesn't mean too much is a standalone, but overall it could support it if you had other reasons to play them. Okay, now you want to check your splits. You want to know who hits righties and who hits lefties. If you ever played baseball growing up, some people just love to hit hit lefties. Some people love to hit righties. We know that typically left-handers don't like to bat off of lefties, and righties prefer to face left-handed pitchers, but that's not always true. So it's not just a blind statement that is 100% true all the time. So I use MLB.com for a lot of things. And you can search through and you can kind of just it's been working really slow the last couple of days. I'm sure they're getting ready for the baseball season and they're updating a lot of things. So I apologize for the delay on them, but I can check a lot of my splits right there. Fantasy Alarm is another website that I don't like a lot of their material, but bits and pieces of it's really good. They're really good at getting their starting lineups out, and they allow you to tier back and forth between guys. So you can check the righty and lefty splits really, really quickly. And when you're in a business like this where you don't have a lot of time, being able to check things like that really quickly is a big help.
Definitely. You got to know where to check. There's a bunch of different places to look. I don't know. Are you still waiting for MLB.com?
Yep, here we go. So we're on. This is MLB.com. You should be able to remember that one. And just a guy I know, for example, JD Martinez batted .302 for the Diamondbacks last year, hitting 29 home runs.
I think he was pretty good against lefties.
Yeah, it wasn't as big. If you had looked at him earlier at the Tiger, like he hit everybody for Arizona, but earlier in the year against the Tigers, like JD Martinez had an OPS of like 1,400 against lefties or something like that. So you just kind of get to know your splits. I mean, I think most of us know that like Ryan Braun of the Brewers, for example, is a popular one. Everybody knows he absolutely rakes off of lefties. So when you get a left-handed pitcher on the mound that's weak, Ryan Braun becomes really, really popular on that day. So that'll help you ride with the more popular guys and kind of knowing, what works for you.
Yeah, and a couple others that I like. One basic one that I use for all fantasy sports is Roto World. They're really good with their information and, up to date, getting stuff out there. So I like Roto World a lot. And then on a kind of a different note, I don't know if you ever look at this baseballpress.com. They're just really fast with the starting lineup. So like even before DK gets them out, they're on the second of when the starting lineups come out.
All right, let's go back to screen sharing here for a second because I want to talk about knowing your scoring. And guys, it could be as simple as just go to Google and Google MLB DFS help, and there'll be a bunch of websites out there that can help you. But you want to know your scoring. Offensively, +3 for a single, 5 for a double, 8 for a triple, 10 for a home run. 2 for an RBI, 2 for a run, 2 for a walk, 2 for a hit by pitch, and 5 by a stolen base. So the one thing that I can tell you right here, if you're going for the gold, guys, you need guys who hit home runs because you're not planning for triples, okay? Because triples just don't happen a lot. But you want guys who hit home runs that can steal a base. I mean, it's great if you go 3 for 3, but you got 3 singles and you only score a run. That's only an average day. A solo home run is worth 14.
Yeah, home run. This it's almost like the point guide is misguided because a home run is 14 points. Obviously, you only get 10 for the actual home run, but home runs are what win baseball, GPPs, cash, whatever. You got to have home runs.
Yep, and the stolen bases are a nice thing that you could add in there. So guys like Billy Hamilton, when they're in a good spot and they can rattle off 3 or 4 steals. I mean, if Billy Hamilton gets 2 singles and a walk, that's 8 points. Scores a run, that's 10. But if he throws in 3 stolen bases, you're up to 25 points, which is a really big day. So if you're going for big points, guys, you got to look at home runs and steals. Runs and RBIs, you got to get a lot of them from really to add up.
Yeah, you got a lot of them. The thing about runs that are good is if you're scoring runs, you're on base doing other things. But you don't play guys necessarily because of their runs. Yeah, I mean, they're not the money makers.
Okay, and then going over to pitchers, you get 2 1/4 for every inning pitched. The big thing to know about pitchers, guys, is don't play for the win. Predicting wins in baseball, between the bullpens blowing it and all the other things that go along with it, don't even worry about the win at all. It's just going to take up too much time. Complete games, 2.5 points. Okay, you can't really worry about that too much. You're not worrying about no hitters. The big thing that you want to learn about pitching is strikeouts are king on DraftKings. They give you 2 points per strikeout. So if a guy like a Max Scherzer goes out and pays 12 guys, that's 24 points right there without even counting his innings pitched or anything that goes along with it. So learn which teams strike out a lot. Last year, it was the Brewers, the Rays, the Athletics, 3 teams that K'd in absolute bunches because those are the teams that you typically want to attack. If there's a power righty on the mound against the Milwaukee Brewers, at least in seasons past, that pitcher was going to be highly owned because everybody knew the Brewers were going to strike out at least a dozen times.
Yeah, I'm with you. Don't even play for wins. And when you think about it like that, it makes it a lot easier to play 2 pitchers playing against each other, which I like to do.
Mm-hmm. That's the other thing. You can play, yeah, that's a good point. You can play pitchers against each other. I mean, even there, you at least have better odds of getting 1 win.
Yeah.
Look at it that way. So I forget where I had it on here, but I like to track team statistics. All right, well, they changed around their website here a little bit on me. All right, now here we go. Team batting. Stats. All right, so I'll have this screen bookmarked. And what I talked about was the fact that Milwaukee, king of the strikeout. Tampa Bay, king of the strikeout. Oakland was another team that I brought up. We know that these teams strike out a ton, and those are the teams that you usually look at pitchers against. Whereas like the Houston Astros struck out like 500 times less than the Milwaukee Brewers last year. So that's like 3 extra times per game that Milwaukee would strike out over Houston. You know, couple that with the fact that Houston's got really good hitters. You didn't really pick pitchers against Houston almost ever. I mean, the next closest team, your team, the Cleveland Indians, Matt, they struck out 66 less times. So you didn't really pick guys against Houston almost all year long.
Or Cleveland.
Yeah. Milwaukee was like your boom or bust team because they were a decent offense and they could shell some pitchers. But, man, did they strike out a lot. So you just know that these are the teams that get picked on a lot.
Definitely.
All right. So we've talked about batter versus pitcher, checking your splits, know your scoring. Okay, I'm going to let you start off on this one, Matt, because I know you love it. Why do you like to be different with the guys that you pick?
So I like to be different in all sports because it's just a path of least resistance. You know, I play the ownership game. I think you have to in DFS. I probably take it a little too far sometimes, but you know what? That's just the way I like to play. And in baseball, it's just where you have to do it because the game is so volatile. Like we talked about with catchers, when you have a guy like a Drew Butera or whoever it is, a Martin Maldonado at 2.6, that on any given day can outscore a Gary Sanchez, or probably not Sanchez, but a Jonathan Lucroy who's a 3.6. It just makes too much sense not to use cheaper guys and get better pitching. On the flip side of that, I think you can be different in your pitchers just on ownership when, like we talked about with the Blue Jays and Yankees on our first opening day video. in baseball, there's so much randomness that goes into at bats, and I know you always like to give an example of a guy can have 3 hard hit balls and be 0 for 3 and get you 0 points. On the flip side, like you mentioned with Butera, he could have a weak walk and score a run, and he's automatically at 4 points. So just so much volatility.
Yeah, I'm not going to use these playoff guys, but just going back to last season, see if we got any high price guys that were up there. All right, these are all bad examples up here, but
you're not screen sharing.
Oh, again, not doing that. Okay. You take a look at a guy like a George Springer, and if he's 4,900 and he killed it at the end of last year, but there's a lot of games where George Springer makes sense and ends up at 0 points. And if you can pick a guy that if half the field bought George Springer that day and he goes for 0, but you pick a guy that goes for 12 points, that's around the same price range, that's a big bump up on a lot of other people. And it works differently in baseball than it does in basketball. There aren't a lot of nights where a guy for 8K outscores Russell Westbrook at 12K. It just doesn't happen very often. But in baseball, it happens all the time. So that's one of the reasons I like GPPs more in baseball than I did in a lot of the other sports, is because there are days that you can take advantage of no-name guys and they can make you a lot of money. And stacking a different team, for example, one of our best days last year for me and all of our customers was there was a small slate in the afternoon that had Coors Field. So everybody was going after Coors Field, even though they had pretty good pitchers going. Well, I stacked the San Diego Padres against Matt Cain, and we just won tons of money because Matt Cain's garbage, and the San Diego Padres put up like 14 runs. And by being different in that certain situation, it was a great way to win all the money that day. I think I did 10 lineups that day in the same contest, and I think like 8 of them were in the top 100 of like 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it just works out so much better to be different in baseball because so much random stuff can happen. That being said, there's nothing wrong with using the guys that'll be popular. You got to mix and match.
Yep, you got to mix and match. Pick your right spots, and it won't work out for you every single day, of course not. So websites that I like to use. So I've kind of already showed you the MLB.com. There's so many different splits that you can check on there. And you have time, play around with it. So I like MLB.com for, checking little things like day and night splits, how certain guys play on certain days of the week. Some guys play different on the weekends because they like to go out and have fun. So there's that one. Fantasy Alarm, to me, I don't like a lot of like their write-ups and the information they give out, but I do think I like the feel and the flow of their starting lineups and how you can navigate through a lot of statistics really quickly. So that's what Fantasy Alarm is good for. I've showed this one already, Daily Baseball Data. This is a good one because it just shows you the whole team against them, so you can see everybody really, really quickly. You get good team statistics against a certain pitcher. Like, we know Chris Archer is an elite pitcher, but we also know that the Red Sox have batted 271 off of them in their career, and his strikeouts aren't that high for what he does against them. So we don't play Chris Archer against the Red Sox. And they also will give you weather, which can be kind of a quick one. But you can check in the beginning of the day before the Roth report comes out or wherever you check. It looks like the Marlins got a lot of wind blowing in, but then it'll also note to you, for those of you who are newer, retractable roof is going to neutralize the weather conditions, so you don't have to worry about that one as much.
Yeah, this site definitely gets into it. I like Daily Baseball Data a lot. It's a really intricate site. I think their layout could be better, but that's okay. I like their information a lot. Yeah, I already mentioned Roto World. I don't know. Do you use Roto World?
No, these are kind of the ones that I use. And then what I do like about Roto Grinders is simply going here to trying to figure out who the popular plays for the day are going to be. So I don't pay for their premium content, and I'm sure some people do, but they'll generally have a list of like projections up here. Okay, here we go. This is talking over the main slate. So you look for the guys who are projected very, very well. You can go by points total or points per dollar. And that way you can get a pretty good idea of where you think people will go using some of the other, basic information that goes along with it. So that way I know at least a little bit on where people are going to lean. And it helps me decide if I want to play that guy because I think he'll also succeed, or if I want to quote unquote fade him, which means doesn't play him.
On that same note, though, projection sites mean even less in baseball, in my opinion, because what we just talked about, the volatility.
Yep. And that's why I don't use these to make decisions, except for the fact that I'm trying to figure out what other people are going to use.
Definitely. So yeah, I use those a little bit. Like I said, I think Roto World gives a really outside perspective on the regular fantasy baseball, and it combines daily fantasy baseball, which I like a lot. And then I use Baseball Crush to get lineups. So those are two easy ones that I like to go to every day, all day.
Yep, and get the ones that you're comfortable with, guys. Go Google baseball MLB DFS data. There's going to be a million things out there. When I first started doing this DFS evaluation a few years ago, there wasn't nearly as many of us. Now there's tons of us, so there's a million places you can go for have a good quality information. And the last thing we want to bring up, for those of you who might be a little bit new to baseball, know your ballparks. And we've already brought up the Coors Field factor. There are certain ballparks that are great for offense, short fences, ideal weather conditions, for example. Colorado is the king. Everybody knows about Coors Field. Arizona has been like Colorado 2.0, but I would recommend watching Arizona this year. They're doing some weird things with the humidor, and it might cut down the offense. I don't really know. I would pay attention to it because in years past, Arizona has been almost as good as Colorado, but has been a little bit under the radar.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Colorado's just a staple to go to. It's Coors Field. Balls fly out there. There's other ballparks that to look at, but nothing on Coors Field is the biggest ballpark or stadium difference in all of sports, really, and how it plays.
Yep. If you're brand new to this, guys, when there's games at Coors Field and whoever it is playing at Colorado, that's got to be your first place to look at for the day and decide how aggressive you want to be with it. In cash games, expect Blackmon and Arenado and all these guys to be real popular. People will play crappy pitchers those days just to load up on the offense, because how many games in Coors Field end up 12-8?
Yeah, for me, I take a hard stance on Coors Field. I think it's something that you either got to play like all the time or hardly ever play it, because there's 82 slates where Coors Field's in play, or 81, excuse me. So we'll get into that in more detailed videos later on.
Yeah, and it depends on the pitchers going for the day, right? And if they got two good pitchers in there, John Gray is one of the new pitchers for Colorado. He's all right. He kind of neutralizes the ballpark factor a little bit. But my Milwaukee Brewers, that's another team, lots of offense. Chicago, both of those stadiums, they can play as pitcher or hitters parks. You got to check your weather for the day. Yankee Stadium, great hitters park. On the flip side, if you go out to San Francisco, Kansas City, Oakland, these are all really great pitchers parks, for example. So it doesn't take much. Just go to Google, type in ballpark factor, and they'll list them through you 1 through 32. The teams that get a benefit from their ballpark, and the teams and they're kind of neutral, and then the ones that get the pitchers get a bump up.
Yep.
So that's just some basic information, guys. If you're brand new to DFS, you can sign up to be a member of the DFS 5-pack. What we provide you guys is we will do longer podcasts on a daily basis. We do small, shorter ones for the public. We do longer ones for our paying customers. We'll go through every game for you on a daily basis for most slates. Obviously, some days have double slates, and it's hard to get those out. We also do a daily summary where Matt and I will talk through our top stacks of the day, who we're going to target from a pitching perspective, and then I will bust out about 60 to 70% of a cash lineup and then give you options for the other positions, so that if you're busy with work and school or kids, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it might be, this will help you expedite the process and still be able to play competitively at the end of the night. You can sign up underneath at the website. If you go to the sign up options, we do have a baseball only special for only $99 right now. Otherwise, monthly and annual and all that will get you both sports or all three sports that we cover, which are baseball, basketball, and football.
And there will be GPP in the write-up also.
Yeah. I do more of the cash. Matt does more of the GPP. We'll talk about our favorite stacks and our favorite pitchers. And then like a lot of people, you can kind of piece them together, whatever works for you.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great day.
Thanks.